What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the Lakers Outsiders podcast and stream. I'm your host, Gary Kester, here with you as always. And joining me, as always, is my good pal, Honi Ahmadian. Honi, we get to talk about a Lakers win today. Nobody played in the game, but the good guys still found a way to get the job done.
Listen, man, you know I love a win over the Jazz more than almost anything in the world, regardless of who plays for either team. So pretty happy about this one.
Especially when they're wearing that ugly green on that floor. So, yeah, hey, we've been saying this over and over and over and over. Any win the Lakers can get without LeBron and Anthony Davis on the floor is a good win. I don't care how many guys sat for the other team or whatever. All that matters is the Lakers are finding ways to get by without their two superstar talents sitting out and trying to get healthy. Sounds like they're both pretty close to coming back, but still need to buy a little bit more time. And luckily, the Lakers are still sitting pretty comfortable in fifth place in the Western Conference. So we're going to talk about that and just talk about the game, where the Lakers are at in the standings, and kind of how important this game was, considering the upcoming next few games for the Lakers. Got some tough games coming up. So, but before we do that, as always, guys, we do these live on twitch.tv/LakersOutsiders. So be sure to hit that follow button. You can also support the site by subscribing to us on Twitch. You can subscribe to us on YouTube as well, and you can like and follow us on Facebook.com. /Lakers Outsiders. You can follow Honi on Twitter, just at HONIAHM. Follow me at Gary Kester, or you can follow my personal Twitch account, which is up on the screen here under that latest subscriber column there, or that row there, SwishGK. And yeah, let's talk about this game, Honi. The Lakers, high scoring first half, lower scoring second half. Lakers had to dig deep. Looked like they squandered they were going to squander a double-digit lead there late in the game, found a way to force overtime and get it done in overtime. What were kind of some of your takeaways from this very important win for this team?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously there's not a whole lot you can take away when there's 5 All-Stars missing from this game. It's less about, really the matchups or anything like that, but more about sort of, to me, the quality and also the character of the guys that are on this team down the roster. I know Lakers Twitter was having a little bit of fun at a old Tim McMahon tweet about the Jazz having the best 3-9 after LeBron and AD of either team, which, I mean, not only is it hilarious after the Lakers win this game, but also we heard that literally all of the playoffs last year.
Like every series.
And it turned out when you have the 2 top players, that the other bit of it doesn't matter as much. But regardless of the pettiness, I was pretty happy with how a lot of guys played. I think for me, the main takeaway was Dennis Schroeder and how huge he was for the team down the stretch. He ended up with 25 points, 6 rebounds, 8 assists, had a couple blocks as well. Almost dunked on somebody, which was a very strange sight. But yeah, especially late in the game, like you said, after the Lakers kind of blew that lead, they had like I think 6.5 minute stretch where they didn't score and they had 5 turnovers. And Dennis was kind of the reason why they were able to at least force overtime. And then he kind of almost buried the Jazz pretty much early on in the overtime period. I think he scored or assisted on 13 straight points for the Lakers at the end of the fourth quarter and the start of overtime. That is kind of the sort of thing you want from Dennis Schroeder. Obviously, he's been kind of playing in a role that he wasn't expected to because of LeBron and AD being out. He's had to have a much larger role, and it hasn't always been pretty. He has had turnover issues, and his efficiency has dropped at times, but tonight, at least, I thought he was just really, really important and crucial on both ends of the floor, really. I think there was a stretch where, like a period of play where he hit a bucket. I think it might have been the start of overtime. And then had great defense on Jordan Clarkson, who was kind of cooking the Lakers, and then went back and got another bucket on the next possession. The sort of like the leadership by example for a team that's missing its 2 actual leaders is really important. And I think the way that he's building chemistry with some of these guys I know Andre Drummond had a quote about him and Schroeder kind of developing their pick and roll chemistry already, and that really showed as well. So yeah, I think for me the biggest positive was Schroeder having such an important game, a great game. Obviously, getting a lot of support from the other guys on the team as well. But when the going was getting tough, he was the guy that kind of pulled the Lakers back and won them the game.
Yeah, I thought he was really, really good in this game. Just making plays, creating offense for himself. Like you said, 25 points, 8 assists, 6 rebounds, 11 of 24. Only 1 of 6 from the three-point line, so not super efficient in some areas, but overall just creating offense for the Lakers. They badly needed it. And it's just something that you typically need when you have a guy like LeBron James out. And also Anthony Davis, who has gotten better as a passer and draws obviously a lot of defensive attention. So getting him to create offense for the Lakers, both, like I said, for himself and for other players, was very, very important for this team. I thought Drummond had a pretty damn good game. He's not a perfect player. Some of his finishing around the basket is can be frustrating at times, but he does have some shots in the paint. Like not a lot of bigs kind of have like a floater. Drummond kind of has like that kind of touch sometimes, which is kind of nice to see. He had 27 points, 8 boards on 10 of 15 shooting. Thought he was pretty solid, and it was good to have him back on the floor. KCP, hopefully KCP is okay because he did get hurt. Did look like he was doing okay. Was walking with a little bit of a limp. Seemed like he hurt his calf on a play that kind of put the game away.
It looked like it was a cramp. I'm hoping it was a cramp just based off how the trainers were treating it as well.
Yeah, hopefully it's something minor. He didn't seem like it was anything too crazy, so fingers crossed on that, knock on wood. Hopefully he's okay. He did play, I thought, pretty well, 25 points, 8 of 18, hit 5 of his 12 threes, which is always a very welcome sight because this team needs guys that can hit threes because we've seen them go on stretches where they just don't make threes. And especially against a team like Utah, you and I talked about it a little bit before we went on. They shot 59 three-pointers in this game and hit 23 of them. I mean, that's a pretty efficient clip. I mean, that's 39% as a team, and the Lakers still found a way to get the job done. It's pretty crazy because Utah shot 41% overall, 42 out of 101 overall, and 23 of 59 from the three-point line. They had 62 points at the half, and then in the second half, Utah only scores 48 in regulation and only 5 in overtime. So defense, credit to Frank Vogel and his coaching staff for continuing to make adjustments on the fly and getting this team, in positions to win games that, some of the games that we expect them to win. Like today, I thought that they should win this one, given what both teams had out. I still like the Lakers' chances, but they've also been in position to win some games that they probably shouldn't have been in, given the circumstances. So defensively in the second half, I thought this team was really good, and I think that's a credit to Frank Vogel and the rest of the staff.
Yeah, and they did throw out, a couple of different things. Obviously, they went really switch heavy at times, especially when Drummond wasn't on the floor, which is really necessary against this Jazz team that just loves to space you out, and their ball movement is incredible. They get open threes very easily, even without a guy like Rudy Gobert, who's usually pretty key to that because of his diving to the basket and being a lob threat. They didn't have him tonight, and they still were able to get a lot of open looks. Even in the second half where the Lakers did play better defense, I thought they had a lot of makeable looks that they missed as well. But that's kind of the deal with these sort of teams. We saw it with the Rocket series last year, where I know I at least had some concerns going into that series because the Lakers' three-point shooting wasn't very good. The Rockets shot a ton of them, and I just thought, man, if they're going to take 53s a game and even make like 20 of them, then that's pretty scary for the Lakers because they're just not going to be able to match that production. But the Lakers have, I guess shown over these last couple of years that even without their three-point shooting being as good as some of those teams, they're able to, be resourceful in how they score and really punish teams down low. And they did that tonight, especially with Drummond, I thought. And also defensively, they do just enough to really make it difficult for those teams and make sure that if they are going to be taking that many threes, it's usually going to be with a hand in their face. I also thought it was kind of interesting late in the fourth quarter. They Vogel really asked for few a lot of double teams on Jordan Clarkson, which I thought was very amusing. They got burned on it a couple of times, but a couple of times I think they also drew some turnovers doing that. So it was kind of just interesting that even for a regular season game with so many guys missing, that Vogel is kind of tinkering and trying to figure out what works with what guys.
I feel like this game was important for the Lakers to win. I think they looked at it as an opportunity to really get one or get another one without LeBron and AD. When you look at just kind of the minutes allocation, right? KCP plays 40 minutes. Of course, you get the additional 5 minutes of overtime, but Schroeder plays 39 minutes, Kuzma 37, Markieff Morris plays 36, Drummond plays 30. But so you have four guys there playing some pretty heavy minutes for a regular season game. Then again, it is an afternoon game. You get to see this team again basically in 48 hours from now. So maybe that was kind of the thinking, is you get almost like that extra half day in a sense.
Yeah.
So maybe that was their thing. They'll probably obviously have a light day, maybe like a walkthrough, shoot around, stuff like that tomorrow. And then they play the Jazz again on Monday. And we are anticipating that the Jazz will have some guys back. I don't anticipate Anthony Davis will play in that game, but it hasn't been ruled out yet. It sounds like he's very close to at least getting back on the floor. Whether it's 15, 20 minutes, whatever it is, sounds like they'll just kind of ease him back in. It'll just be great to have him back out there. So we'll have to see if that happens on Monday. I don't anticipate it will, but sounds like it could be something that happens this week, which is obviously a welcome sign for the Lakers. And LeBron sounds like maybe 2 to 3 weeks away, maybe sooner. Who knows? He's out of the walking boot and everything. So everything, it's progressing, which is very good to see, because you want this team to get some reps with the guys back and kind of get reacclimated and all that stuff. Get them get them back in game shape and all that stuff, and get them those reps going into the playoffs so that they're playing at least somewhat close to their best basketball, and they're fully ready to go when the playoffs roll around and these games start to ratchet up. Because even with these guys out, the Lakers, like we said earlier, are sitting pretty comfortably in that fifth seed.
Yeah, exactly. And I think they've been right around 500 without LeBron and AD playing, which is just remarkable, honestly. Like, you can go through that schedule and nitpick and be like, well, this game that they won was against a bad team. This team was resting players, etc. But at the end of the day, if you're going 500 in a stretch without your two best players, you'll take that 100 times out of 100. And I think there's a lot of positives that have come out of this stretch in terms of this team continuing to play great defense without those guys. Some players like Taylor Horn Tucker getting opportunities to kind of show what they can do when they have the ball in their hands. He's been really, really great the last few games. I thought Alex Caruso has been starting to kind of get it back together after he had a little bit of a rough stretch. So yeah, there's a lot of positives to take away. As much as we want AD and LeBron out on the floor as soon as possible, just so that guys can get accustomed to playing with them. And like you said, they get into game shape by the time the playoffs come around. But, as brutal as some of these games have been, overall, it's, I think, mostly been a positive for the Lakers.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about that a few times, that it could be a positive for this team long term. Ideally, you kind of allow AD and LeBron to kind of rest a little bit and let their bodies recover and really get much of an off season to do that. And now they're getting some time to rest and recover. Obviously you don't want it to be in the fashion that it's come, but and then these other guys get to get some additional reps and prepare them for if a moment comes where they are presented an opportunity to get in a playoff game. And do something that's kind of outside of their role a little bit, whether it's somebody gets in foul trouble or an injury or whatever the case may be. That these guys should be ready for something like that. And I think a lot of these guys, I think Schroeder is the guy that's really stood out to me this year as obviously Taylor Horton Tucker as well. I didn't expect him to make quite the leap that he has this year, but Schroeder is a perfect example, I think, of a guy that has really grown this year and surprised a lot of people, including, I think, both of us, because I think we felt about the same way about him coming in. I thought he would have ebbs and flows, which every player does outside of your superstar players. But Schroeder, I think, is a perfect example of a guy that has proven his worth during this stretch, and I think he's proven to be better on both ends of the floor than I anticipated coming into this season, especially defensively. I think he's been phenomenal on that end.
Yeah, the defensive stuff definitely was something that I didn't expect. I don't know if it was just something that I overlooked or if it's something that he's improved on a lot. But for a guy that is as small as he is, he definitely puts up a good fight on the defensive end, and he has quick hands and can get into passing lanes and really holds his own for the most part. Offensively, I think you kind of see, for the most part, the kind of player that he's always been. He can get to the basket pretty easily, especially against the switch, just because he's that fast. His finishing at the rim is pretty good, even through contact. His jump shooting, like off the dribble, is pretty good. But his 3-point shooting kind of is on and off. And he is very much susceptible to throwing a lot of turnovers, which has been kind of a key recently. But yeah, overall, like you said, he's been a very, very pleasant surprise in terms of how important he's been to the team, and really kind of coming into a championship team and showing that he is probably the third best player, at least the third most important player for this team, which we saw when he got injured as well, with AD out. Yeah, so I've been really pleasantly pleased with him in terms of the consistency, while a lot of guys have kind of ebbed and flowed, like a KCP or a Caruso, who are important to this team but have had their longer stretches of not playing as well as we're accustomed to.
Yeah, Dennis is all heart, man. Like, that dude will dive on the floor for a loose ball,
Yeah.
even if he has very little shot at getting it. I've come to respect his game and just him as a player just a lot more this year. He's been a very, very pleasant surprise, and hopefully him and the Lakers can get a deal done, and he is back with the Lakers for a few more years, because I really like his game and what he's brought to this team, and he's a big reason why the Lakers have sat right now in fifth in the Western Conference and are a couple games up on Portland right now for the 6th seed, and they're 4 games up right now on Dallas for the 7th seed, which obviously you don't want to be anywhere between 7 and 10, because you have to do the play-in games to get in. If the Lakers were 7 or 8 or even 9 or 10, I still wouldn't be overly concerned. Would I be nervous that they wouldn't get in? Yes, but I don't think it's going to be really something we have to worry about. So hopefully, and if not, like if they're the 7 or the 8, I would not be overly concerned that they would not get in. So right now they're 5th. What do we have? 15 games left or so now at this point. So I don't know. The standings are starting to take shape. This could, this game, I mean, not really a preview, but we could see that these two teams face off potentially in the second round, because the Jazz are sitting right now. I mean, they're tied in the loss column with the Suns. They do have 2 more wins, so they're a game up on the Suns, which is crazy, because I feel like Utah's been, the number, like the top dog in the West in terms of the standings for quite some time, and just checking it again today, and it's like Phoenix is right there on them. So pretty crazy to see. But I mean, if these two teams were to meet in the second round of the playoffs, how do you think it would go? I mean, would you be concerned about this team? It would be kind of similar, like you said, to that Rockets series, I think, in the second round last year. A team that shoots a lot of threes, kind of a perimeter-oriented game. Obviously, the Jazz have Rudy Gobert. The Rockets had P.J. Tucker playing center for them. So a little bit different dynamic there. But how would you feel about these two teams if they faced off in the second round?
At the risk of eating my words in a couple of months, to me, I think the Jazz are the ideal matchup in the second round. Out of all the other top 4 teams right now, I think the team that I would most want to play in the second round with a chance to go into the conference finals are the Jazz. Now, am I a little nervous about that? Yes. Anytime a team takes and hits as many threes as these guys do, I'm always going to be a little bit nervous and scared about that, just like I was about the Rockets. Obviously, that was mostly a dominant playoff series for the Lakers, but there's just so much volatility with the 3-point shooting team. There's a chance that they miss a crop ton in a row, and you just overrun them because that's the only way they play. Or there's a chance that they hit like 50% of their threes and take 50 of them, and you just have no way of catching up to that. But having said that, I think in terms of just the matchup, and I think that's ultimately what it is in the playoffs, because all of these teams from a skill level and rosters, they're fairly similar. Like the Nuggets aren't much worse than the Jazz, even if their record isn't great. The Suns aren't much worse or better than either of those two teams. Um, but from a matchup perspective, I think the Lakers have a guy in Anthony Davis that can really give Rudy Gobert more trouble than pretty much anybody else in the league, in terms of drawing him out of the paint, and also being able to defend him without having to send multiple guys and leaving them open for three pointers. I also think the fact that Markieff Morris has really picked it up after a pretty bad stretch to start the season, to me, that is kind of a key for that sort of series, just like he was in the Rocket series, because he allows the Lakers to play small. And I think you would have to play a little small against this Jazz team. I don't think Marc Gasol or Drummond would really be playing a whole lot in that sort of series. Um, so, if he's keeping this up and having the same level of impact, then yeah, I think the Lakers have a really, really good chance of beating the Jazz. Plus the fact that, like most teams, I don't think they have anybody that can really slow down LeBron. I think a guy like Joe Ingles is a pretty solid defender, but he can get lost in space because he's slower. Royce O'Neal is a fine defender, but we've seen it time and time again that LeBron kind of goes after him, and he really isn't able to put up much of an obstacle. So as long as they're able to kind of win the Gobert matchup, I think the Lakers would have a pretty good, if not great, chance of beating the Jazz.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at like the top three seeds right now between Utah, Phoenix, and the Clippers, if you said pick one for your second round matchup, at the risk of, like you said, eating our words later, I would pick the Jazz. The Clippers are a team as well that shoots a lot of 3-pointers, and they shoot it at a very efficient clip. The Suns have, to me, it's more about. I was gonna say, if you didn't bring it up there at the end, that I just don't think the Jazz have anybody to necessarily guard LeBron, which, as we saw in the Houston series, was a big deal because LeBron just broke them down time and time and time and time again, and the Lakers just basically got anything they wanted. Again, the 3-point shooting, like you said, the volatility can be a bit worrisome because, I mean, even though the Lakers ended up dominating that Rockets series, there was a point where the Rockets went ballistic in that game too in the third quarter, came storming all the way back from a pretty big deficit to take the lead going into the fourth quarter of that game. And so we thought, the Lakers might be down 0-2 to this team, and that's going to be tough. And the Lakers figured out the equation. They solved that puzzle, and the rest was history. And I think they could do that with this team. And like you said, I think Anthony Davis is such the perfect chess piece against a guy like Rudy Gobert, who has a history of getting played off the floor in the playoffs anyways. And it's no disrespect to Gobert. I think he's a good player, and he, for what his role is, and he's very good as a defensive big man, a rim protector, a defensive anchor, all that stuff. And a guy that can finish around the basket because he's so athletic and long and all that stuff. He's not the guy to guard Anthony Davis because AD can just there's going to be moments where Gobert might get the best of him, but overall, man, it almost feels like AD takes that matchup a little personally. And whenever they go that game we saw them play Utah in the bubble last year, right before the playoffs started. I mean, AD just lit him up. He lit Utah up in general. He was just doing everything in that game and scoring basically anywhere on the floor. And AD is something else, and I just don't think Gobert is a great matchup for him. I do think you can play Marc Gasol some spot minutes against Gobert and do kind of the same thing because he can also pull Gobert away from the basket with his 3-point shooting, and you also won't have to chase around on the perimeter if he's guarding a guy like Rudy Gobert. Plus, I just trust Marc Gasol's basketball IQ and stuff like that in that type of matchup. So. Yeah, I mean, not to say that Utah is a pushover by any means, because I think their record speaks for itself, and I think Donovan Mitchell is a stud. He's really good, and he's a tough cover for any team, and he's a lot to deal with, and their 3-point shooting and all that stuff. But I do think the Lakers would still win that series. I don't know in how many games. If I had to guess, I would say Lakers in 6, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Maybe Lakers in 5. I did say Lakers in 5 off air. So we'll cross that bridge if and when we get there. But it was nice to see the Lakers get this win, and they're sitting, like I said, pretty at that 5 spot right now in the West. A little bit of a cushion between them and Dallas for that 7. And a little tiny one between them and Portland. So this was a good win for the Lakers. I'll be curious to see how Monday unfolds, given that Utah will definitely have some guys back. I don't know if Donovan Mitchell's going to play. It sounds like his injury is a little more severe than the other guys who I think were just out due to rest because of back-to-back and all that. But it should be, I think it is the 3rd game in 4 days for Utah. So plus you had a little bit of travel in there. So we'll see. We'll see what Monday brings us, but this was an important win for the Lakers to get as we start to wind down, and hopefully LeBron and AD come back here soon, say maybe in the next 5 or 6 games or so. Fingers crossed, and hopefully they can get some reps before we go into the playoffs, because I'm ready for some playoff basketball, man. I really am.
Yeah, it's been a very long, not always fun season, I think, really across the board, not just for the Lakers, but or Lakers fans, but really a lot of teams around the league. But yeah, I am looking forward for the playoffs. I think it's going to be really interesting, man. Like the West especially is so loaded right now that a team like Portland or Dallas being in the bottom half of that bracket and being in danger of not even making the playoffs is pretty insane. So yeah, I am really looking forward to that. I'm really looking forward to the Lakers getting healthy, seeing what this team can do. It feels a little. It's the same but different from last season, where going into the playoffs last year, we didn't really know what to expect just because we hadn't seen this group in the playoffs together. And this year it's almost the same thing, not only because they have new players, but also because we haven't seen them with LeBron and Anthony Davis in so long that it's like it's a completely new team forming, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks before the playoffs starts. So it's going to be really interesting how they can kind of build that chemistry in a pretty short amount of time, and whether they can get that going for the playoffs.
Yeah, the West, for example, Dallas right now at 30-25 is 7th in the West. If they were in the Eastern Conference, 30-25 would be good enough to put them 4th. So, that's kind of the difference between the two conferences. But I feel like that's how it is just about every single year. The West just always has the better teams. So, it is what it is. But, the Lakers are in a good spot, and I would like the Denver matchup in the first round if that's who they got. It would be cool for the Lakers to get home court in that series, but I don't think it would matter a whole lot. With Denver not having Jamal Murray now, I think he was kind of a thorn in their side last year. And so is Jeremy Grant, who's no longer there. So
they were looking scary before the Jamal Murray thing.
Yeah.
I thought they looked like maybe the 3rd best team in the West after the Lakers and the Clippers to me, just because Aaron Gordon really was unlocking some stuff for them. And as far as guys that can guard LeBron go, obviously nobody can do it really, but Aaron Gordon I think is about as good of a matchup as you could ask for if you're an opponent. But without Jamal Murray, I don't think they have quite enough weapons to really bother the Lakers defense.
Yeah. So we're starting to see stuff really shape out a little bit. I don't know, man. I still like where this team is sitting. I'm proud of how they've fought through this stretch without those two guys, because a lot of people were, showing screen grabs of their upcoming schedule and saying when's their next win, right? Like showing like 15 games, like they were going to lose 15 games in a row. But no, they fought, and they're keeping their head above water, and they're minimizing the damage and just doing what they got to do until they get those big dogs back, and then it's on from there. So. And there, there's, if they do get those guys back, I mean, maybe they climb up the standings a little bit more. Who knows? So we'll have to just kind of wait and see. But I'm anticipating they'll probably be in that 4 or 5 matchup going into the playoffs. And if it's Denver in the first round and they're playing potentially Utah in the second round, then I think that honestly is a pretty favorable path for the team. Which is funny because I thought last year, before the shutdown, the Lakers were on track to have a favorable path, and then when they got to the playoffs, I was like, "Damn, this is tough." Like they get a hot Portland team, and then Houston, and we thought the Clippers, but then they blew a 3-1 series lead to the Nuggets. People forget that. So we'll have to see, but at the end of the day, just be healthy going into the playoffs, And at this point, like seeing the KCP thing, the first thought when that happened was like, just no more injuries before we get the big guys back, and then like let's just be healthy. That's all I want.
Yeah, we got to turn injury sliders off. Basically, what you're telling me about these favorable matchups is that we should tank on Monday, and we should have tanked today, so we can make sure we get the Jazz as the first seed and not the Suns.
Now we had to beat them today just to let them know, like we're coming for you in the second round.
Okay, that's a good question. Well, we can. I'm guessing we're gonna end on this, but Jazz or Suns, which team would you prefer to have in the second round? I think it's pretty close.
I prefer the Jazz. Like I know Chris Paul gets a lot of stuff because he's only been to the Western Finals, I think, once. But like as you saw with that Thunder team, man, I think he affects the people around him, and I think he's a great leader, and I think he'll be able to help elevate the Suns and their level of performance when the games start to really matter. And I think that the Suns roster is built pretty well. I think they've got good shooters, good wings, stuff like that. I just think that they would be a little bit tougher because I trust Chris Paul to deliver more in a playoff series than I would maybe some guys that Utah has. Outside of Donovan Mitchell. I agree with that. Because I think Mitchell's going to be really good regardless.
Yeah, I agree with that because, one, Chris Paul, I think if you're picking anybody out of the league and saying we need somebody to, like, unlock this Lakers defense because it's probably the best in the league, I would probably choose Chris Paul just because he is that smart of a player and he can kind of get guys set up the right way. And then I think Devin Booker is probably the most explosive player out of any of those, either of those two teams that could just go for 40 any night and that's game. So
and he can do it despite your defense. Like he's the type of guy that you can play, like we saw with Jaylen Brown the other night. I mean, I thought a lot of those shots were well defended. He just hit tough shots, and Booker's a guy like that. So if you can avoid players like that, the Jazz obviously have Donovan Mitchell, and a lot of shooters around him. But and I don't mean it as any disrespect to the Jazz. I think I applaud them for how they played this year, and they do play, a very beautiful brand of basketball. And I think there's been times, as much as I hate to say it because I hate the Jazz, I've enjoyed watching them play basketball. They do play, fun brand of basketball, and I applaud them for their efforts this season. But I just think the Lakers match up better with them than they might with some other teams. But I will also say I don't think it matters. I think if the Lakers are healthy, I will still take them to beat whoever they're matched up against 4 out of 7 times. So, but then again, I'm a Laker fan, so.
I think what's just got to happen because of all the Kobe and Shaq comparisons last year for LeBron and AD is that they bungle through this whole season with the injuries and get the 5th seed and then go 15-1 or 16-1 in the playoffs.
Perfect. And the one will be probably the first game of the playoffs, and then they'll just win 16 straight after that. All right. Well, that's all I had. Honi, anything from you before we get out of here?
Nothing. Well, we're working on something, but I don't want to say it yet because I'm not entirely sure that we'll be able to do it. But uh, I'll just say if you are a fan of the social media platform TikTok, you might be able to find us on there.
Oh boy. We'll
It's
leave
just
it.
going to be me and Gary dancing on there, shaking some ass.
Hey, Lakers win the title again. There's gonna be a lot of that going on. So, um, all right, yeah, we're gonna get out of here. Might go get a Popeyes chicken sandwich. I might not. Who knows? It's dinner time, so. Okay, we did get one thing I want to bring up in the chat. Orange Kobe,
Okay.
shout out to Orange Kobe, said the win is important because we get to see Hani's beautiful face.
That's very kind of you. I would have been happy either way because if you're not noticing, wearing a little FC Barcelona shirt, so we just won a trophy today. So pretty big day in this apartment.
Yeah, go soccer. I don't know anything about soccer, so. Um, but yeah, no. So we're gonna get out of here. I apologize. We were off for about a week or so. I was out of town. I was out of town longer than I anticipated, so that was the reasoning for that. But I'm back, and yeah, hopefully we get to talk about some more wins coming up here. We got a couple of tough games coming up for the Lakers. They got the Jazz, played Mavs a couple times, but season's winding down. We're getting close to the playoffs, and I'm excited. I'm excited to get the superstars back and get this team rolling and get them into the playoffs and see if we can defend the crown. So, all right. As always, guys, we do these live on twitch.tv/Lakers Outsiders. You can follow or subscribe to us on there. You can subscribe to us on YouTube as well. And like and follow us over on facebook.com/Lakers Outsiders. That's where the three platforms that we do all these live shows. And then afterwards, we'll go up on all the podcast platforms. So Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever. Wherever you get your podcasts, we'll be there. So be sure to follow Honi on Twitter at HONIAHM. You can follow me at Gary Kester or my own personal Twitch account, just twitch.tv/SwitchGK. So we're going to get out of here. Thank you guys so much for listening, for watching. If you're watching this, enjoy your Saturday evening. Be safe out there. Have some fun. Do whatever it is that you do. But until next time, with Honi Ahmadian, this is Gary Kester and the Lakers Outsiders signing off.
Shout out Derek Fisher.